Summary. The group finally reaches the gate to the next region, but not without conflict. Chapter 17, Kill Squad. I'm still wondering what this thing does, Hunter muttered, studying the blue, sphere-shaped object in his paw. It had been growing out of stalks in the ground, glowing dimly in the darkness of the region. He had asked Artificer if she had any idea what it was, but even she had no idea. Survivor hummed as he joined Hunter in studying the item. Maybe it's edible? His mate wondered aloud, reaching out and squeezing the plant. It didn't seem malleable, still staying in its spherical shape. No, too hard. I doubt even your teeth could bite through its skin. Hunter glanced up towards Artificer, who was still scanning the horizon. Hunter guessed their next run towards another tunnel was longer than the rest. He could find no other reason as to why she was suddenly so careful and patient when she'd made them start moving forward, as long as she couldn't see a glimpse of the birds the other times. Maybe we can open it with a spear or something? Hunter eventually said, looking back at the sphere and raising his spear slightly. The insides might be edible, after all. Survivor frowned, not seeming to be on board with his idea. Glimmer seemed unsure as well, looking at Hunter unsurely. I don't know, what if it's explosive or something? Survivor asked, gently lowering Hunter's spear-holding paw. Better safe than sorry, right? The red slugcat deflated slightly in response. Fine, I guess that's for the best, he mumbled, putting the regular spear back on his back. As useful as the explosive spears were, Hunter honestly felt a bit unsafe constantly carrying one around on his back, especially after seeing the devastating effects they had on flesh and bone. He shuddered as he remembered the bird's biomechanical head flying off its body, spine and all, landing somewhere out of view with a loud metal crash. It feels like we've waited for hours. What's taking her so long? Hunter mumbled, scowling in Artificer's general direction. Give her some time, she's probably just making sure it's extra safe for us. Survivor chirped, Glimmer squeaking happily alongside him as if in agreement. Yeah, but the rain could start at any moment, and I'd rather get moving sooner rather than later. Hunter grumbled, crossing his arms. Speak of the devil. A familiar explosion sounded above them as Artificer landed next to the tunnel, quickly getting to her feet. No birds in sight, I can't even see the glow of their eyes in the distance, nothing, she said, almost seeming a bit disappointed. Maybe the explosions from earlier scared them off, or something. Survivor responded. I just hope they don't all converge on this location, having heard the explosion. He added, fear in his voice as Glimmer whimpered on his shoulder. Whatever the case, we should take the opportunity and move now, before they come back, Hunter said, wrapping his tail around Survivor's and grabbing hold of his paw to reassure him. Artificer hummed and nodded before suddenly taking off, running along the ground. Hunter grunted and moved to follow, pulling Survivor, and by extension, Glimmer, along with him. Hunter was right in his assumption of the distance to the next tunnel being longer than the previous ones, with the group having to run for at least twice as long to reach any sort of cover. Finally, they walked through a small passageway leading into a small cave. The cave contained even more of the blue spheres and, more importantly, a few centipedes for Survivor. The slugcats worked together to catch a few, none of them were particularly big, and centipedes were quite slow and weak, making them easy to spear to death. Once Survivor was satisfied, they left the surviving creatures alone and climbed up the tunnel leading upwards out of the cave. From there, they crawled through a nearby pipe. We're almost at the gate. From there, it's all new territory for me. Which means your little overseer friend will have to lead us the rest of the way, Artificer explained once they climbed out the other side of the pipe and started walking. Hunter glanced up as they started walking. In front of them was a huge wall stretching upwards into the sky. Not even Artificer, with her cool abilities, can scale that thing, he thought smugly, looking over at the maroon slugcat. She almost seemed to be able to read his mind, looking over at him and scowling lightly. Suddenly, a couple small rocks tumbled off the wall, landing in front of the slugcats. They froze, and Hunter glanced up. Is someone at the top of this thing? He squinted his eyes, trying to see through the darkness. Before he could see anything, however, he was suddenly grabbed by the scruff of his neck and pulled backward. He suppressed the urge to yell and protest as he was dragged underneath a suspended metal platform, hidden from view of whoever was at the top of the wall in front of them. Hunter tried to get up, but the paw at the back of his neck held onto him tightly. He glanced to his right, noticing Survivor sitting next to him. His mate was glancing behind them with a fearful expression, a maroon-colored paw still clutching the scruff of his neck as well. Hunter growled lowly, turning his head to yell at Artificer. He stopped growling once he turned and saw her expression. It was one of intense, tranquil fury. She glared blankly at the top of the wall, not showcasing any outward signs of anger, but Hunter could practically feel incredible rage emanating from her in waves. He barely managed to suppress a whimper of fear as she let go of him and Survivor, picking her explosive spear off the ground and gritting her teeth, shaking with anger. "Scabs!" she hissed, her paws clenching so hard that Hunter could swear he heard the metal of her spear creaking under the pressure. He exchanged a nervous glance with Survivor and gulped. This would not end well. Artificer had a feeling, as soon as that rock fell off the wall, that it was a dumb, clumsy scavenger that had revealed itself. Glancing up, she quickly spotted a pair of antlers at the top, approaching the edge to peer down. Reacting on instinct, she grabbed onto Hunter and Survivor, pulling them backwards and underneath cover. Glimmer fell off Survivor's shoulder in the shuffle, but luckily did not squeak loudly. Now hidden from view, she kept her eyes on the top of the wall, seeing the scavenger in more detail. Its color was a dark brown, its eyes were light red, and slanted downwards. It also wore a yellow vulture mask, something that set it apart from most other scavengers. Artificer grit her teeth. An elite, that would make things a bit more difficult. She just hoped there weren't any more of those annoying bastards around. It glanced down at the ground below it, not noticing the slug cats hiding in the shadows. It chittered something to another unseen scavenger before turning around and walking out of view. What were the scavengers doing here? There was nothing for them to find out here. It was nowhere near a good place to try to establish a toll. It was way too risky. Even the dumb scavengers must know that. She felt her anger spike as she realized why they happened to be in this exact area, blocking the pipe that led to the next gate. It's a kill squad. Artificer supposed she should feel honored. In any other circumstance, she would have accepted it as an extra challenge. However, the timing of this couldn't possibly be worse. She let go of her fellow slug cats, picking up her spear. "Scabs," she warned them, just in case they hadn't noticed yet. "Stay here, I'll take care of them." She ignored the slug cat's quiet words of protest as she crouched down and stalked forward, staying as low to the ground and as quiet as possible. Glancing up, Artificer confirmed the coast was clear before speeding up the last distance and crawling into the tunnel ahead. Spotting a rock on the ground, she picked it up and put it in her mouth. Once she reached the junction in the tunnel, she climbed upwards, spitting the rock out of her mouth and studying it to make sure it was properly covered in her explosive spit. This part was risky. If any of the scavengers glanced down into the tunnel, her element of surprise was gone, and the whole situation would get a lot harder. If she listened closely, straining her ears, she could hear the muffled sound of chittering. They were unfocused, conversing with each other, and distracted. That made things easier for her, at least. If only there wasn't a mask-wearing one, this would be so easy. Artificer thought, suppressing a growl as she looked upward, seeing the dark sky above her. No scavenger glaring down at her. So far, so good. Slowly, ever so slowly, Artificer moved upward, and eventually, the chittering of the scavengers' conversations increased in volume. She picked up on a few words: tired, bored, and cat. Smirking, she stopped just short of peeking her head out of the tunnel. A louder chittering was heard, trumping the others in sheer volume and pitch. Just a single word, one she recognized well: quiet. She froze, clutching the bomb tightly in her right paw. She tensed her body, ready to spring. The chittering had completely stopped, and she heard one of the scavengers sniffing the air. A moment of complete silence passed until she heard quiet chittering start to formulate a sentence. With a snarl, she pushed off the sides of the tunnel with her legs, shooting out of the pipe and into the air. Quickly locating her first target, an orange scavenger standing close to the edge of the wall, its blue eyes wide with fear. She throws her homemade bomb at it, its panicked screech gets cut off by the explosion, and Artificer grins in satisfaction. She hears loud chittering behind her and the sound of metal on metal. Relying on instinct, she explosively jumps higher into the air, narrowly avoiding an explosive spear. The weapon flew past, missing her head by an inch. Free falling, she spots her next opponent, standing next to the scorched ground where her bomb landed. It's a uniquely blue scavenger, its eyes closed in pain. Its spear has been dropped on the ground, it sits on its knees and bleeds from the head. Growling, she leans forward and reaches out her empty paw, falling claws first towards the scavenger. It glances up, only one of its yellow eyes, sporting big pupils, is open, the other covered in blood. The scavenger has just enough time to panic, its eye growing wide, before she pounces. The scavenger falls backwards, pinned to the floor. She sinks her claws into its shoulder, and it hisses in pain. She turns her head, catching sight of the elite preparing to throw another spear at her. Next to it stands another scavenger with a gray body and orange eyes. It's holding a bomb and winding back its arm to throw it. She grunts, throwing her explosive spear at the two. The elite tries to dodge, but her throw isn't aimed at it, it's aimed at its comb-carrying friend. The bomb carrier in question doesn't have any time to react before the spear lodges in its gut. It makes a gurgling sound, falling to its knees in pain as the spear hisses in its stomach. Artificer can see the elite's eyes widen, and she smirks as she turns back to her pinned prey, trying desperately to escape her grasp. With a hiss, she leans down and sinks her teeth into its soft throat. The scavenger's pained screams are drowned out by the loud explosions just behind her. As she bites down even harder, savoring the taste of salty copper, the scavenger's screams are heard even through the ringing in her ears. With bloodthirsty satisfaction, she tears out the piece of meat in her mouth, the creature's screams turning into wet gurgling as she quickly chews and swallows the raw meat. When the scavenger below her finally ceases its twitching, she detaches her claws and stands up, turning around. The gray scavenger was nowhere to be found, but the elite was still kind of in the same spot. Its mask had been blown off its face, one of its legs was bent at an awkward angle, and much of its body was burned. Miraculously, the damnable creature was still alive. Noticing her looking at it, its eyes widen in panic as it tries to painfully crawl towards the pipe leading to the gate. She growled, picking a dropped spear off the ground and slowly shambling towards the struggling creature. These elites are always so tough to kill, she thought to herself, though she had nothing to really complain about. The ambush had worked out way better than she thought. Many of the scavengers were inexperienced scouts at best, not warriors, and an easy way to take care of the elite scavenger had presented itself. As she got close, the elite seemed to give up on escaping. Instead, it turned around and stared her down. The dark brown scavenger chittered angrily in defiance, its slanted eyes narrowing. It kept screaming at her as she crouched down next to it, growling. She didn't understand a single word, but she guessed it was screaming obscenities at her. "You got any last words?" she rasped, smirking with satisfaction as the scavenger fell quiet, its defiant gaze wavering slightly. After a moment of thought, it narrowed its eyes again, looking straight into her eyes. "You will not kill all of us, Red Death," it chirped in her language, smiling smugly as Artificer could feel her face twist in anger. With a growl, she stood up and aimed the spear between the scavenger's ribs. It took a deep breath and closed its eyes, ready for death. But just as she was about to thrust her spear into its heart, "Wait, don't." Artificer sighed, she recognized that voice. Looking up, she saw that Survivor and Hunter had joined her. Hunter, despite his usual stoicism, seemed shocked at the destruction she'd caused, looking around at the destruction she'd caused until his gaze lingered on the mauled scavenger. Survivor was standing closer, paws held up in a placating manner. His eyes were nervously flitting between the scavenger on the ground and her. What truly made her pause were his eyes. They were glassy and filled with unshed tears. Glimmer was at his feet, looking towards Artificer while hiding behind the white slugcat's legs. "Please, Artificer, put down the spear." He said this, taking a careful step towards her. She glanced down at the scavenger on the ground. The creature coughed twice, blood leaving its mouth. Killing it at this point is a mercy, Survivor, she mumbled, looking back at Survivor. He didn't seem to be very comforted by this, shaking his head rapidly. There's no need for more violence, please. A few tears ran down the slugcat's face, and despite herself, she felt her heart ache slightly. Hunter finally seemed to snap out of his shock, walking up next to Survivor. Survivor's right, drop the spear, he said, worriedly. The end of the cycle is approaching, and we still have to pass through the gate, find something for Glimmer to eat, and find a shelter, he explained, walking towards her and holding out a paw. We have no time for this, besides, the scavenger's as good as dead already. Artificer glanced down. The scavenger had closed its eyes, mumbling something to itself. It sounded like some sort of mantra, maybe a prayer. Do scavengers even have a god to pray to? Slugcats sure don't, not as far as she knows anyway. She was getting off track, she decided, focusing back on the here and now. Artificer gave the scavenger a light kick in the side, ignoring the baffled shouts from the other two slugcats. The scavenger didn't react at all, it just kept mumbling. With a sigh, she handed the spear over to Hunter. Killing it at this point would be boring anyway, she clarified, not wanting them to misunderstand it as her having sympathy for the creature. Survivor sighed in relief as Hunter took the spear. Glimmer chirped quietly, climbing up to sit on the white slugcat's shoulder. With a nod, Survivor wiped his eyes with his arms, giving Glimmer a scratch on the head. Okay, well, let's keep going, he said quietly before walking up to the pipe and going through. Artificer took a few steps towards the pipe, ready to follow, when she remembered the problem between the karma gates and her. Grumbling, she walked back to the dead scavenger elite. She saw Hunter fiddling with the spear before taking a deep breath. We need to talk, he said it, his voice cold as steel. Artificer hummed, crouching down next to the scavenger corpse. Well, seeing as she wasted some energy making her bomb, she might as well get some back. So talk, she responded, leaning down and starting to tear through the scavenger's guts, disregarding Hunter's groan of disgust behind her. Listen, I get having to kill aggressive scavengers that are in our way. Really, I do. He started, walking in front of her as she feasted. He crouched down, getting to her eye level. Artificer looked into his eyes as he gave her a worried look. But this wasn't just a regular killing out of necessity, out of survival. His gaze hardened slightly, and he leaned a bit closer. This was a slaughter, he whispered. Artificer hummed, leaning down and taking a couple more bites of the corpse. Afterwards, she stood up and licked her paws. Hunter stood up as well, looking at her incredulously and waiting for a response. Your point being? She eventually responded, shrugging as Hunter gaped at her. You can't seriously tell me these bastards deserved mercy? They were literally stationed here to stop us, violently, if needed. Hunter didn't seem satisfied with her response, stepping over the corpse between them and staring her down. Judging by your massacre when we first met, I really do wonder who started the whole conflict between you and the scavengers, he said, sarcastically. Artificer felt her blood boil at the insinuation. She started it? He's accusing her of starting it. Growling, she dropped into a combat stance and extended her sharp claws. Hunter flinched, hopping backwards over the corpse and reaching for his back, wrapping his paw around the spear but not yet pulling it out. Let's make one thing clear, Hunter, she said, voice low and shaking with rage. You don't know shit about how I ended up in my situation, so you can keep your judging to yourself. She snarled, shaking with anger. You got that? Hunter, to his credit, didn't look all that frightened, though his expression softened slightly as he removed his paw from the spear on his back. I suppose you're right. He said that, and Artificer stilled before retracting her claws. Well, she certainly didn't expect it to be that easy. I'm sorry, Artificer. I have no right to judge your actions, she hummed, feeling the anger leave her body as she straightened out of her combative stance. It's fine, I forgive you. Artificer finally said, looking Hunter in the eyes. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for scaring you and Survivor. Hunter perked up slightly. I don't apologize for killing the scavs, mind you, but just going into my rampage, let's call it, without warning? She clarified, stumbling slightly over her words. Yeah, sorry for that. Well, that's about the worst apology I've ever heard, he said, snickering. She scowled in response, crossing her arms. But I reckon it's the best I'm gonna get, so I guess I'll forgive you. She pouted as Hunter laughed again, unable to stop a small smile from spreading on her face. Whatever. Let's get going, shall we? She eventually said as Hunter's laughter died down. Right behind you, Hunter said, nodding. Artificer nodded back, bent over, and started pulling the elite scavenger corpse towards the pipe. When she'd pulled halfway, she noticed Hunter wasn't even helping her. In fact, he was staring at her, looking very confused. What? She dropped the corpse on the ground. Why are you bringing the corpse along? Hunter asked, the red slugcat looking utterly confused. What do you mean? Artificer responded, gesturing towards the pipe. We need it for the karma gate. If anything, this just made Hunter look more confused as he tilted his head. Karma gate? You mean the decontamination gates? Artificer spluttered. What kind of stupid name? Who the hell calls them decontamination gates? Hunter frowned, crossing his arms. Who in their right mind calls them karma gates? And brings a scavenger corpse along? He gestured towards the carcass dumped on the ground. It's the only way to open them. Artificer responded, getting frustrated with this conversation. However, when Hunter tilted his head again, she paused. You don't need scavenger corpses to get through? No? He responded, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. No way, I call bullshit, she said, glaring at Hunter, who shrugged. I don't know what to tell you, me and Survivor just waltz on through them. Artificer looked him in the eye, searching for any signs of a lie. Finding none, she huffed and walked towards the pipe. Prove it to me, show me you can walk through the gate without a corpse, she yelled, standing next to the pipe and gesturing him inside. Fine. He said this, walking over to the pipe, stopping and glancing towards her. Where'd you get karma gates from anyway? Artificer growled, grabbing hold of Hunter and throwing him through the pipe. None of your business, she screamed as Hunter's surprised yell faded away as he went through the pipe. Huffing in irritation, she took one last look at the horizon, finally seeing a couple birds running around, approaching her location, but far enough away that she could literally crawl and walk towards the pipe at a snail's pace and still make it through. With a hiss, she gave the birds the most offensive hand gesture she knew before finally turning around and going through the pipe to the decontamination and